Hi everyone, good Monday. This is our third week. I will spend with you just today, just Monday, and then you will have two incredible lessons with Anna. One about ecofeminism, and I really love ecofeminism as a subject, so I'm really happy that the person as qualified as Anna will talk to you about this subject. And then you will for sure talk about environmental racism. Both of the topics are really, really relevant for our debate, and they will perfectly connect to our discussion of environmental ethics. Because for now we have just spoke about anthropocentrism, the way in which we oppress the non-human world, and we have spoken about ethical theories, the ontology, utilitarianism, and how those theories were applicable to more than human ethics. So, for example, sentiocentrism, for example, biocentrism, ecocentrism. And also, we have mentioned briefly the virtue ethics and the idea that our behavior can also be about flourishing, about happiness, rather than being mostly based on normative ethics and the idea that we should pursue something right or wrong according to single actions that we can then connect to a broader theoretical framework. So we have already spoke about many things. We have already faced various passages and pages of our manual, and we had the opportunity to read interesting papers, especially the last one of Pike about morning nature and how do we feel as subjects, as emotional, psychological subjects, how do we feel about the oppression of non-human nature. Today we are going to talk about deep ecology, and you will have to read as well a super interesting paper of James Hartley, Professor James Hartley of the University of Salisbury, if I'm not wrong, that wrote this very weird, peculiar paper that I love. That is the uncanny goodness of being edible to bears. And later I will tell you a few words about it. But I think that it connects super well with the pike and morning nature. Why we left with virtue ethics and now we're going to talk about deep ecology? Mostly because deep ecology is a movement, is a social movement, a political movement, a philosophical movement that started in the 70s. And this is a movement that has a lot to do with non-normative ethics, so something very different from what we have seen so far with Peter Singer, Reagan, Paul Taylor, etc. But it's more about how do we consider our position in the world, how do we consider ourselves in the cosmos. So basically deep ecology is about changing not the ethics in the first place, but changing the ontology, the cosmology, the description of our position in the universe, in order then to change spontaneously in a way very similar to virtue ethics that will influence the way in which we act. So nothing extremely normative, but something that will flourish spontaneously. So good actions will flourish spontaneously from a different perception of ourselves. And deep ecology is mostly about it. Deep ecology is a philosophy that emerged from Ernie Ness, a Norwegian philosopher, very famous, very influential, that shaped profoundly the culture, the Norwegian culture particularly, but he wrote a lot about Eastern philosophies. He wrote a lot about Buddhism, Gandhi, about global peace. He was a very engaged person that cared a lot about many topics. He worked with indigenous people, Sami, in the north of Scandinavia. He was a super 360-degree engaged person with a vast CV with a lot of achievements. But one of those achievements is the foundation, is the creation of the seeds of what is called deep ecology or long range deep ecology movement. We'll say a few words about it later, why long range and why deep ecology. To say it briefly, deep ecology is something different from shallow ecology. Shallow ecology and deep ecology is the terminology of Ernie Ness from an article in the 70s. And it's really important to distinguish shallow and deep. Now, many people criticized Ness to have used the term shallow to describe many important aspects of our engagement with the environment, because shallow ecology, in the perspective of the deep ecologists and Ernie Ness, is the idea that basically when we try to solve environmental issues by doing technical adjustments, by doing green capitalism, by doing several laws or political decisions, regulations, trying to control toxic externalities, trying to improve animal welfare, etc. We are basically trying to fix technical issues downstream, but we are not solving the root causes of our contemporary crisis. So basically, Ness was indicating the fact that we can try to solve issues that are visible, like, oh, there is biodiversity loss, so let's create a park. There is a problem of animal suffering, so let's try to put some rules that will force farmers to treat better animals in the facilities. And those are very important things, and the term shallow sometimes make them being perceived like irrelevant. They are deeply relevant, and they were relevant also according to Ness. Yet Ness was pointing out something that we will see also with environmental racism and with ecofeminism: the very fact that at the very core of our relationship with the environment there is something wrong, and we know somehow what is this wrong. The wrongness can be conducted to something like monotheism, with human supremacy, with Western culture and Western colonialism, can be conducted to patriarchy, sexism, racism, deontologization of other entities like inferiors. We can find it in Descartes, we can find it, a lot of it, in the Western philosophical tradition. We can find it in the Old Testament with God in the Genesis giving to the humanity the dominion over other living beings. So there is a lot going on, and many people were trying to define which are the deep roots of this ecological crisis, and many were the answers. But undoubtedly, the very idea that there should be a deep ecology, it means that we should go deeper, so underneath the surface, to try to investigate which are these roots. And deep ecology is not telling us exactly which one is the root, and this is the cool part of the proposal of Ernie Ness, but it's trying to make us think that shallow, stay on the surface, is not enough. We cannot just go with technical fixing. We cannot just go and say, oh, let's extract a little bit less of this, let's damage a little bit less of that, let's try to exploit in a more sustainable way this forest, and trying always to adjust the mechanism without criticizing the basic structure of this mechanism. So with the ecology, we criticize the roots, we criticize pronatalism, the idea that we should do more and more children, have more and more children to like colonize the entire planet. We should criticize the notion that we should extract all nature to turn into capitalist accumulation. We should criticize the fact that we are superior compared to all the other animals and all the other species and all the rest of the planet. We should criticize all of these things, because this is the only way forward if we want to live not only sustainably but justly on this planet. The cool aspect of Ness is that he's proposing a kind of metaphysics, a kind of ontology, a common vision for a movement that we can see in terms of layers. At the first level, there are the deep motivations of why we should care, and Ness is like open to multiculturalism. And so he says you can be Christian, you can be Muslim, you can be atheist, you can be Buddhist, you can be Socratic, you can be many things, and there are many reasons why you should care about our planet, about biodiversity, about other species, but this doesn't matter. For now, what matters is that you find your own personal reason that can come from your cultural background, or can come from your studies, it can come from your personal experience. And then there should be this ontological, metaphysical level that we all agree about. The fact that we must care very intensely and deeply for a just life on this planet within a biological community that is much more much broader than us. And we are part of this ecological community at the point that our personal self is no longer confined within the limits, the boundaries of our skin, but we are part of our environment. We are not just part of our society, but we are the environment, and the environment is us. There is this constant contamination between who we are and who is the environment, at the point in which basically we can kind of connect to a deep level to significant features of our landscape at the point of being part of them. And in this way, we become, in a certain sense, immortal, because we become materially part of the cycle of life. Kind of Lion King, but deeper, thinking ourselves like deeply connected at the point that our identity is shaped by the identity of everything else. At least, not only in an abstract sense, we are the planet, but we are this geographical space. We are this mountain, we are this lake, we are this river. Undoubtedly, Ness is taking a lot of this rhetoric also from Sami people in the north of Norway, and Sami were involved in protecting rivers from dam buildings because they were part of the landscape. In their identity, the river was part of their identity. And the same happened with Ernie Ness with this mountain. He used to live on the Vergestein mountain. I don't know if my Norwegian pronunciation is correct, but on the top of this mountain, he was able to feel personally to be a place person, a person connected to a place at the deep level, at the point of not fearing anymore to be vulnerable, to be something destined to change, to pass away, etc., because he became something bigger, part of a broader picture. But if we can agree and have a movement at this level, a movement that then can be based on logical observation about the status of the planet, of our planetary condition, then at the level of policy making and at the level of personal action, there could be again diversity. There can be people pursuing, for example, new technology. There are people that can be involved in veganism, people that can be involved in birth control, people that can be involved in biodiversity conservation directly in the field, people that can be involved in creating a better world in terms of creating peace and promoting peace on this planet. There are many ways, and everyone should do his or best without having a normative way of being in the world. There are 8 points that are at the core of deep ecology, but these 8 points are not necessarily something normative that cannot be changed. They were points developed by Ernie Ness and others that were let's say a guideline for putting together combining together a broader movement that should have had the goal of a long-term change of the structure of our society, of our global society. I will read you briefly. And the first one is that the well-being of human and non-human life on Earth is of intrinsic value, irrespective of its values to humans. So basically, we have already encountered this concept. Non-human life on this planet has intrinsic value. So no longer extrinsic values, no longer instrumental values, but intrinsic values. And this is something that we already seen, especially with biocentrism. Second, the diversity of life forms is part of this value. So it's not just life, but diversity. And in this sense, we can also see coming together sentiocentrism, biocentrism, and ecocentrism. Then humans have no right to reduce this diversity except to satisfy vital human needs. For sure, the term vital human needs is something purposely left open, something that we can discuss, because what is a vital need can still be discussed. Is a television a vital need? Probably no. Is insulin a vital need? Probably yes. Is water a vital need? Absolutely yes. So there are different shades, but is freedom of movement a vital need? We can think about it. So Ness and others decided to leave this door open for further observations. Then, and this is a point very important, especially because we will talk about population in the future, the flourishing of human and non-human life is compatible with the substantial decrease in human population. Nowadays, we are a bit obsessed with the idea that the population is declining, especially in Europe. But at the end of the day, there are more than 8 billion people on this planet. It's something without any precedent. And we should start to think about the fact that at a certain point we must decrease, or at least we should stop to grow, because it's not possible to think of a planet flourishing of biodiversity and flourishing of humans with the number of people that is constantly growing on a finite planet. Unless we think like Elon Musk or other people that we can colonize other planets, but this is another option, another perspective. It's not something that we can take easily as an assumption. Then humans have interfered with nature to a critical level already, and this interference is even worsening right now. So basically, the sixth mass extinction, the Anthropocene. Oh, with Anna, you will also face the concept of Anthropocene, the geological epoch in which we live right now, an age dominated by human influence over all the ecosystems, over all the environment and the geology of the planet. Very interesting, a fundamental topic. You will have the time to discuss it. Then for sure there is the political aspect. Policies must change, and this should affect our economic, technological and ideological structure. This ideological change should focus on the appreciation of the quality rather than the quantity of life. So we should not just thinking about increasing our standard of living, but in terms of quantity, for example, how many things we consume, how many clothes we have, but thinking about quality. For example, how much free time do we have? How much time we dedicate? We have the time to dedicate to relationships with people and care and so on and so forth. And the last point is that all those who agree with the above points have an obligation to implement them. So if you agree on the 7 first points of the platform of deep ecology, then you must try to do something about it. Changing the economy, shrinking human population, acknowledging the damage to the planet, changing the way in which we value life from a quantity perspective to a quality perspective. So this is pretty much deep ecology, and I think that you should know that deep ecology is still fundamental nowadays, even though it's been criticized by ecofeminism, it's been criticized by environmental justice, etc. Sometimes because it's too abstract, sometimes because it's too few anthropocentric in a certain sense, sometimes because it doesn't acknowledge openly problem like racism or sexism, even though it does, but most of the time not explicitly enough for the complexity of our time. But I think that it is a great moment now for a revival of deep ecology, and more than thinking beyond deep ecology, we should think with deep ecology. So adding rather than subtracting. It's to me is always the best logic, trying to think not about the points on which, for example, ecofeminism and deep ecologies are not coming together, but thinking about the point in which there is a possibility of contact, possibility of cooperation, possibility of coming together and creating a broader movement. Because right now, the ecological awareness and the ecological movement should not be based on small differences, but should be more based on common goals, common aims. And I know from I know for experience, and I know because I studied this topic for many years, that one of the biggest issues that we find many reasons to not agree one with the other, especially in an academic and political level, or but also the level of movements. For example, let's think about people involved in conservation, most of the time fighting with people involved in animal rights protection and so on. But we should start to develop a common sensibility, a common ecological culture. You will have to read for today also a part of a page, if you have the printed version, from page 209 to page 217, in which there is a brief description of how we should think of ecological culture. So not just about normative ethical theories about how to engage with non-humans, but also about how do we create a sensibility. That's why I wanted to leave you today by suggesting you to read very carefully The Uncanny Goodness of Being Edible to Bears of James Hartley, because it's a reflection about what happens when humans are exposed to predation from non-human animals, or to the possibility of dying because of the paws and the claws and the fangs of non-human animals. And the bears are animals that are always at the core of our fears and our worries every time we go in the woods, we go in the wild, etc. I'm Italian from Trentino, and the area is a core area of the brown bear, and there are a lot of conflicts. A guy recently died while running because he stumbled on a mother bear with cubs. You should know, as Americans, that or people that live in the US, that there are potential conflicts with brown bears, with black bears, but also with polar bears. And however, thinking with non-humans is also a way to think about our place on this planet, and thinking that non-human animals can injure us, can kill us, or can even think of us as food is something that can totally redefine our ontology, our position, and our perception of being at the top of the food chain to being at the top of the pyramid of everything. So if you think about the scala naturalis, if you think about the chain of beings, if you think about us being at the top, then when we encounter animals like sharks, like bears, or even entities like COVID-19 that can actually prey on us and use us, etc., then we have something like a bubble in which we live, our idealistic bubble of superiority of humanity that explodes. And when this bubble explodes, then there is the possibility to think beyond anthropocentrism in a very materialistic way. One case of this that is mentioned in the article is the one of the eco-feminist Val Plumwood, and she was deeply influenced in her philosophy by an attack of a crocodile. She was attacked while canoeing in Australia by a crocodile, and she survived 3 death rolls. And this changed entirely her perception of what does it mean to be flesh and blood, to be human, to be a living body, and to live among other living beings that can think of us not as humans, but as energies that they can use to survive as well, because the planet is not just a planet for us. So I hope that you will read with a great enthusiasm the paper of James Hartley, and definitely if you would love to write about it in your assignments, and if you will mention it in your assignments for the 3rd week or in your final, I will be more than happy. I will be, from one side, really surprised, but also enthusiastic about reading your consideration. And if you have further consideration on this subject, I will gladly read. So please feel free to contact me or Anna at our email. And now enjoy the readings for today, and see you on Wednesday. Anna will introduce you ecofeminism, and then on Wednesday she will still teach you about environmental justice, 2 very relevant topics. So please follow all the video lessons, and keep track of your duties, because you're doing well. You're already halfway to finish this class, fortunately or unfortunately. I hope you're enjoying it so far, and see you next week together.